Yesterday was a nostalgic day in welcoming a private-public partnership to return short-track racing to Chesterfield for all fans, citizens, and visitors, and related businesses. Today is just as nostalgic as we recognize the inherent value of Chesterfield in serving its citizens, visitors, and businesses. However, in contrast to entertainment and the exciting but uncertain outcome of a race around an oval to a finish line, our budget is an austere approach where our pace is a straight line progression, slow and steady, with no finish line, as we've been racing to be the best for 276 years, longer than we've had a state or a country. You'll also be hearing from two of the most trusted and respected local government fiscal minds in the profession. They will later today and the remainder of the month in many community meetings provide more details from our 400-page budget document, the proposal of the county administrator. This is prior to the public hearings and Board of Supervisors discernment, adjustments, and action that they will be taking in April. If I could assign any homework, I would ask all to read the 14-page county administrator transmittal letter at the front of this 400-page document. This provides the path for nearly all topics of interest for those to then dive deeper into the rest of the document to serve their needs. We are also here as a resource for any questions that may arise. I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the departmental leaders in formulating their requests for their needs to serve our citizens. All needs cannot be funded, but rather prioritized, with some needs further refined for future year discussions and engagement with our Board of Supervisors. I also respect Dr. Murray in how he formulated his school needs to all of us, and how both his school board and our county board continue to focus all of our funding shortfalls of the schools on the state's perpetual incongruence between its mandated level of public school service and its state funding. Their own JLARC report confirmed this, and my less technical interpretation is, put your money where your mouth is. This is just our operating ask of the state. For the schools, as local government provides 100% of its capital needs. Our 2022 bond referendum, together with our county and school boards working together, have worked out new and rebuilt schools together, and our school boards redistricting, school by school, hopefully, that will finally overcome a generational issue of overcapacity. I also want to thank the collective county and school workforce for all that it does every day. Their efforts have been recognized by many national, state, and regional awards for innovative practices, cost-saving ideas, service above the call of duty, and their own assessment in being a top workplace for those starting and staying here for a long, productive, and rewarding career. Regionally, there will be much attention to the public utility budgets, and while we were able to sustain a water system during the regional crisis and enabled our water to help out Chippenham hospitals and others in the region to have a water pressure, we are not done in creating a dynamic and resilient system. This budget has a $426 million allocated for Phase 1 of the Lower Appomattox Water Treatment Plant, the county's fourth water source for even greater capacity and redundancy for decades to come. And from long-term planning, our operating and capital budgets for utilities will continue to have the region's lowest utility rates for its customers. I realize that we're under constant inquiries regarding federal funding. My observations are fairly simple. Our direct service levels of a county are not as dependent upon federal funds as many people think. 2, Virginia is recognized to be one of the best managed states, and Chesterfield to be one of the best managed local governments. That includes fiscal stewardship. Therefore, news stories of other local governments and states less resilient will dominate the news before these topics reach our state and county lines. 3, we cannot react to what we don't know and only what we do know. So until definitive funding issues are provided to us and businesses and our nonprofit partners are also aware of their impacts, we will continue to forge ahead in an austere manner 24/7, but also be mindful of the local environment economically that has not experienced a recession cycle since 2007. Ideally, any impact upon federal funding would be mitigated with the removal of unfunded federal mandates and burdensome regulations. And 4, the state and local governments of the state of Virginia have to have a balanced budget by law. So we are not in the deficit funding modes that many also may be at the federal level, other states, and other local governments across the country. In the interim, we are continuing to drive down the real property tax rate, increasing tax relief for our elderly and disabled, as this continues to be our highest increasing expense, providing rebates on the first half real property tax bills, a regional leader from 2023 in continuing our low personal property tax rate, increasing business license exemption thresholds so that small businesses that grow inflationary perspectives are still classified as small, and avoidance of any and all meals tax rate discussions. While each of these may affect citizens and businesses differently, under state code, there are not many other manners to differentiate our tax base and the manners in which we tax. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Deputy County Administrator Matt Harris and then Gerard Durkin, and we'll be glad to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Everybody hear me all right? I'm a little off to a second. So I'm going to touch on sort of two main points on the budget and then let Mr. Durkin kind of get into some of the more specifics in terms of the expenditures that are in this plan. Excuse me. So I think these are kind of taking Dr. Casey's points and drilling down a little bit further, but process-wise, let's start there because I think that's really important this year. We are talking about the fiscal 26 budget for the county, which goes into effect on July 1st of this year. So, why is that relevant? I think I'm not breaking any news here to say if you pick up any newspaper or look at any financial website, the amount of economic uncertainty that is currently, floating around out there really is at unprecedented levels. So we as local government are trying to build a financial plan that has to last us all the way to June 30 of 2026. So that's a difficult environment. And we have, by code, specific deadlines by which we have to get that done. By May 1st, we've got to have that balanced budget in place. So we don't have the luxury of waiting to see, how will all of these federal discussions and tariffs and all of the things that we see every day, we're not weighing in on that in any way, but the lack of certain direction makes it very difficult to build a financial plan. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we are putting out a plan that is doing two things, is moving forward key initiatives. That's what Mr. Durkin's going to walk you through. We are not walking away from the things that we have been doing incrementally over the last couple of years, such as the referendum Dr. Casey referenced, public safety pay, trying to remain competitive in that space. Those top line priorities, we continue to make progress. But we've got to balance that in this particular year with enough flexibility such that if the economy does turn at any point over that horizon all the way through to June, end of June next year, that we have the ability to pivot and make sure that we can sustain and maintain the services that our citizens, businesses, and visitors all count on and have come to know Chesterfield County for. Borrow a little bit from Dr. Casey mentioned the Great Recession, although this is not a health and safety matter by definition. Certainly COVID, in terms of the timing of that, is very similar. Don't know how that's going to shake out. We took a very measured approach in terms of building a budget in that environment, and then we were able, over the course of the year, to add stuff back and take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. And that's really served Chesterfield very, very well. And so I think we're learning from those experiences, those successes, to build this plan that's before you today. So it does take a much more measured approach than what you've seen the last couple of years. That's the result of a couple of things. Again, it's a deliberate decision to take our foot off the gas a little bit and let all of this macroeconomic risk sort of sort itself out. And then also our just our revenue sources are starting to relax to some of those long-run averages. We've been saying that for the last several years. Home values coming back to the average, sales tax growth starting to moderate. So we expected those things. Add on this layer of trying to sort out and again build a budget in a very sort of murky environment. That's what you've got here. So I will let Mr. Durkin walk you through specifically what's in the plan, but I can't stress enough that while we're presenting this budget today to the Board of Supervisors, turn our attention very quickly to community engagement sessions for really the rest of the month, culminating on the 26th with the public hearing. And then the board is scheduled to vote and put this budget in place on April 9. And while there's probably many that like to think that's the end of the budget process for fiscal 26, I don't think this cycle is going to work that way. This is going to be something where we are regularly in front of the board, in front of the community, in front of the media to the extent that we need to do that, to be able to give updates and move this overall plan in a corresponding direction to whatever we're seeing in terms of the overall economic environment. So April 9 is a big day, but we are we're settling in for the long haul. We're expecting that this is going to be something that we're going to need to monitor at least over the calendar year 2025 to see if we need to make additional modifications or again take advantage of opportunities that might present themselves as we did a few years ago after again we sort of understood the economic ramifications of COVID. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and talk about some of the specific spending decisions because, again, although we're taking that austere approach, that measured approach to this budget, we still are getting a good number of important things accomplished with this plan that's being presented today.
So the overall budget for the county this year stands about $2.4 billion. You will see throughout all of the funds there's a heavy capital emphasis in this budget, multi-year financial planning that we are well known to do, especially in the utility side with the fourth water supply that Dr. Casey referenced earlier on. In terms of the general fund, it's up about 4.4% this year. That is a slight decrease from last year's 5% year-over-year growth. But in terms of where that has went, to what both Matt and Dr. Casey have said, it's in a really limited sphere. Tax relief program has an additional $5 million added to it this year, going from $19.2 million to over $24.2. And just to give you some longer range context in that program, back in fiscal year 2009, that was a little over $3 million each year. Now it's proposed to stand at $24.2 million, far outpacing other line item growth that we've seen in the general fund.
And just for y'all's background, he's specifically referring to we have a program that covers three primary groups: seniors, the disabled, and disabled veterans. So that's what we're talking about. We've got an additional $5 million going into that program. The disabled veteran piece is a state-controlled aspect of that program. But what the board has focused on in particular is taking care of our seniors, those on a fixed income, and making sure that they can continue to afford to be in the community with all of the pressures that we've seen, particularly on the price side the last several years. So an additional $5 million, and we are just depositing that into that program. We don't have to make those program choice modifications for some time. That gives us an opportunity to see what's going on in the broader environment, to see what inflation is going to do, and then we make those modifications for January of next year. But it's really crucial to the board that we continue to take care of those on a fixed income that have lived here for their entire lives, and make sure that they are at the top of this budget priority list. So that's why we're starting there.
The other major emphasis in the general fund side is for public safety pay. Accounting for the 7.2% adjustment that they received in January on an annualized basis as part of the fiscal year 26 budget, that actually accounts for about 40% of the increase in where the new funds are going in this fiscal year 2026 budget. For the general government side, there's a merit proposed in at 2.5%. That may be lower than what some of our regional partners are doing, but just for some context, this is something that we've stressed through the long-range plan that we can adapt to the situations as they're happening on the ground. If conditions improve, it's certainly something that we'll revisit, but it's certainly something, if you take out that macroeconomic noise, it's something that we can stand behind 100% today, as opposed to some other localities, that may have good intentions, but if things decide to take a decline, they may have to roll that back. This is something that we can definitively stand behind over the next 18-month period. And then finally, education has been it's one of the 3 pillars of the county in terms of our priorities. The recurring transfer to schools this year is up a shade over $15 million as well. So if you take those 3 areas together, the tax relief programme, the public safety pay adjustments, and then education, that's over 82% of the increase where this year's additional funding is going. Some other quick highlights that are in the budget. There's some transfer, we've received federal dollars over the last few years. We've put in the budget now permanent funding for the fire and EMS mobile integrated health and peak demand ambulance service. That has been a really good service for the community, and we've seen a lot of strong demand for that service, and it's a programme that's now going to have continual support from the general fund moving forward. On the capital side, we are continuing with the referendum projects that we've already issued funds for. We are taking a breather in fiscal year 26 in terms of issuing new debt, and you'll actually see, in contrast to our federal partners, our debt payments in this budget are actually going down, not up. But the out years of that 5-year plan does see a resumption of those referendum projects. By the end of the plan for fiscal year 2029, all of those will be in motion. There is $36.5 million in local road funding. That is comprised of local, state and CVTA dollars that really emphasises key projects, including some roundabouts and sidewalks. One of the things that we like to do where possible is, get the maximum return on every dollar. So you'll see a large line item in fiscal year 26 for the revenue sharing programme with the state. It's a little shade over $23 million. That's basically a 1-for-1 match. For every dollar that we put in, the state will match that dollar 1-for-1. So maximising every dollar where we can possibly do so. And then finally, on the utilities front, bears repeating multiple times, it's a $1.6 billion 10-year plan that they have. Several key upgrades to the system to make sure that the system has strong resiliency for anything that may come in the future.
I just want to, Dr. Casey touched on this, but I think it bears repeating on the broader tax relief topic. Just want to walk through those initiatives that are in this budget. So it does include a 1 cent reduction in our top line rate, which is the real estate rate, which is in effect for tax year 2025, so that corresponds with the calendar year. This marks the 4th consecutive year that we've reduced that rate. So just 4 years ago it was at 95 cents. 4 consecutive drops, we're down to 89 cents. The first time that the county has ever gotten below the 90-cent mark. Even though it's a challenging economic backdrop, we recognize we're not in that alone. Households and businesses are facing those same uncertainties, and so it was really important to us on the tax relief side that we try to share that experience that we're all kind of going through. So that really is an important part of this. In addition to the 1 cent rate, and again, just sort of tying back to some of the topics from late 2024, the board took $15 million of budget surplus from the previous budget and is applying it to the first half bills that are due June 5 of this year. So when you combine that one-time credit, which we've done in the past, we did that in 2023, and the 1 cent rate reduction, if your home appreciated by the average amount in the county of 5.1%, then by the time you combine those two factors together, your average residential bill, if you're right on those marks, if you're left or right, it's going to vary some degree. Your increase over the prior tax year is only 1.3%. So Mr. Durkin did a good job laying out. We're getting a lot of things done. We're doing it at a limited cost, and we built in a good number of safeguards so that as the next 16 plus months unfold, that we can respond to anything else that might come up. What are some of those examples? We are taking a year off on the county side in terms of selling referendum debt. We came out of the gates, we were very aggressive. The market responded well to us, so we have good number of those projects from 2022 that the voters approved already underway. So we felt like we could take a step back, take a breath, let those projects work out to completion. We can still stay on overall schedule for the referendum because we were ahead, but that takes a little pressure off this budget. There's no new debt service from county projects. Schools, which is a larger part of the referendum, they're continuing to do so because those capacity challenges have been out there for a good number of years, and we don't want to step back from that priority. So trying to find that sweet spot in terms of new debt. There's over $7 million of budget reductions, reallocations. Mr. Durkin and his team, some of which are in the room today, worked very, very hard to go through and try to find, it didn't matter the amount, trying to find anywhere that we could reallocate dollars within the budget to try to, again, maximize what we're able to accomplish, but do it at that 1.3% average increase. So that's a big part of this. We also have zero use of reserves on the county side. Why is that important? It means that if economic conditions do change, we can reach into that rainy day account that we're known to have is a common feature of AAA localities, and we can bring those dollars to the table to make sure that we're maintaining service levels. Federal interruptions, whatever the case might be, we do have the ability to carry that for some period of time because we aren't using those reserves today when we're proposing the budget. So that's a really important thing. So we feel like, and there's numerous other examples, I won't go through all of them, but suffice to say, getting a lot done at a low cost with a high number of safeguards built into the budget that will allow us to respond to any changing conditions over the course of the next year. So with that, I think we're ready for any questions, Teresa.